Cricket Last Stories with me, Neel Khagram. Today we're joined by BBC's Test Match special producer, Adam Mountford. Adam, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. It's all a bit strange at the moment, but just looking forward as we speak. We've got cricket just over a couple of weeks away, so we're all hoping get back to some sort of normality.
Yep, can't wait. So just for the benefit of people that don't actually know, can you explain your role as the producer?
Yeah, so I'm basically in charge of, actually not just Test Match Special, but effectively in charge of all the cricket coverage across BBC Radio. I also have some involvement now in some of the television and online services as well. I mean, one of the great joys of cricket on the BBC these days, it's really joined up multi-platform, to use that sort of famous phrase now. So, you get the whole experience. But obviously the most interesting part of my job is producing Test Match Special. And that goes really from the whole of the programme, from putting together the budgets for how much it might cost, to putting together the personnel for each programme, doing a rota every day to who's on with each commentator, working out what goes in the intervals, down to all that element, plus, working with people on logistics, whether it's, hotels or travel, that sort of thing. So yeah, I work in all sort of elements of the job, really, from the planning stage, where you might look at a set of fixtures 12 months out, through to actually on the day I would sit there in the commentary box producing the programme. And that, as you say, is sometimes it's rotas, it's thinking of intervals, it's helping the commentators, creating a sort of environment for them to perform at their best. But yeah, it's a sort of quite wide-ranging role, and actually getting wider by the day, as there's so many different ways of consuming cricket.
So cricket, was it always a passion of yours from a young age?
Absolutely, yeah. I was hooked in 1981, so I was 9 years old then, I just loved the excitement of Botham's Ashes. In actual fact, I was supporting Australia in 1981, which might surprise a few people. My big brother, was a big England cricket fan, and I thought, well, he's my brother, I've got to go for someone different. So I went for Australia, and that looked pretty good after the first test or so. Australia were on top, and we got to day 3 at Headingley, and again, Australia were doing well. Kim Hughes was sort of a hero of mine. I liked his sort of golden locks and wonderful stroke play. And then it all turned around, and Ian Botham was the hero, and everyone remembers that sort of series. And I think that whole summer hooked me to the game of cricket. And, I was like a lot of youngsters, I suppose. I went from playing in the park, playing in the back garden, and then wanting also to get involved in the broadcasting of it all. So I would sit, I remember, with an old-fashioned tape player with the cricket on in the background. I was doing my own sort of commentary, just my own purposes, really, just because I wanted to emulate those people I'd heard on the radio or on the television, and that was my kind of love. And I'm very fortunate that my great love, cricket and radio, my two great loves, are encapsulated in the job that I now do, and I'm incredibly fortunate to have that.
So you went to Warwick University, but you studied history, if I'm correct in saying, not journalism. That would surprise many people. Is it more important the experience you got there? I know you were involved in the radio side of things. Was it W963?
Yeah, that's right.
Just for budding journalists.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that getting a sort of media qualification isn't necessarily the be all and end all. For me, history actually is quite a useful subject in actually doing what we do today. I mean, you may say, why would that be? But I guess, when I was studying at university, it was all about getting a big subject and trying to communicate it in a way that people could understand in an essay or a presentation or a dissertation, whatever it is. And pretty much that's what we do today with broadcasting. It's getting a massive subject like a test match and thinking, how do you broadcast that? How do you bring it alive for the audience in a form that they can enjoy? And I thought the two skills were similar. But yeah, when I went to university, although I'd say my sort of loves were radio and cricket, I didn't really know I was going to become a broadcaster or a producer or that sort of thing. What happened was there was a university radio station, as you mentioned, W963, University Radio Warwick, which had quite a few quite well-known people came through, people like Simon Mayo and Stephen Merchant. Timmy Mallet, would you believe, was also a W963 alumni. And I remember quite vividly now, actually, I was sort of getting into university, quite enjoying it, but I didn't really feel I knew my place. And I saw an advert in the newspaper, the university newspaper, which is called the Warwick Ball. And on it said, we're starting a sports programme on the radio, on our radio station. I remember thinking that day, this sounds perfect. I love radio, I love sport. I'll go along and see what's going on. If I really enjoy this, gosh, this could be something I really want to do. And I have a distinct sort of memory of sitting in the studio and you know, speaking on the microphone, talking about, you know, not just cricket but other sports, and thinking this is brilliant. And that absolutely, I think at that moment I knew that's what I wanted to do. And to be honest, I spent much more time in the university radio station than I probably did in the lecture theatre. But it sort of paid off in the end, because it gave me a real focus what I wanted to do, and also some contacts to be able to do it.
Yeah, so then from there, didn't you get you did a little bit of work experience initially with CWR, BBC CWR. Isn't there a little story somewhere in there where the producer was on holiday, you covered, then it wasn't on some holiday, you got injured, and then you got the role?
No, you're right. I mean, it was the literal big break, because what happened was I was working at the university radio station, and at the local BBC station called CWR based in Coventry, they had a youth programme called PDQ, which I'd go and help out on a Sunday. It was a Sunday evening programme, and that was a brilliant experience, working with lots of young people, same age as me, same sort of ambitions, putting together a radio programme that was broadcast on local radio every Sunday night. So it was a real programme, but it was actually really carefully constructed. Lots of skills were learned, whether it's broadcasting, editing, producing, all that sort of stuff, working in a radio car and all those different things. Anyway, I was working on that programme, and the editor of the radio station one evening came in to listen to the programme, and he said, look, we've got a big problem next week. The person who normally does our sports bulletins is going on holiday, and we haven't actually got any cover. Is anyone here in this group who likes sports? And I put my hand up and said, well, it's my favourite thing. I love sport. And without sort of thinking back and thinking, this is actually my last week at university. So all my friends were out, you know, having a few drinks and enjoying, you know, the last week of life as a student. And I was volunteering to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to read sports bulletins on the local BBC service. Anyway, I was covering from this guy who was going on a skiing holiday. Anyway, at the end of the week, the manager came in and said, look, this guy, he's broken his leg on this skiing holiday. Can you stay on? And I said, well, yeah, of course I can. But of course, I'd actually left university and I had nowhere to stay or anything like that. So I ended up staying in a hotel, which was costing me more than I was getting paid to work on the station. But I thought this is a great opportunity. So yeah, I started doing the sports bulletins. And after a week or so, they said, look, to be honest with you, we reckon you're a better bet than the guy who's on his skiing holiday. So we're going to give you the job. So I felt terrible for him, but it was a literal big break. He breaks his leg. I got the opportunity, and I was working in professional broadcasting in my first week after university, and I was unbelievably fortunate.
And then from there, you met Peter Baxter, the former producer of TMS. How was that kind of connection? I know you following Warwickshire around as well, but that connection key for your career?
Yeah, I guess so. So what happened was, I got to work, as I say, at the BBC station in Coventry. I also worked a bit at WM, and between the two stations, they covered Warwickshire County Cricket Club. And it just so happened, this was 1993, 1994, when cricket fans might know that was Warwickshire's incredible period, really. They won trophies in 93, but 94, they won a treble. A certain player called Brian Lara arrived at Edgbaston, having just broken the record for the highest test score. In that summer, he scored 501, breaking the highest first-class score. Warwickshire were everywhere. They were national news. And it meant that my first trip to Lords, I'd never been before, was covering Warwickshire in a Lords final, commentating on it. And it was there, up in the turret at the pavilion, that I met Peter Baxter, and someone obviously I'd known about for years. You know, he started on TMS when I was age just 1. I mean, he's got incredible experience of producing TMS. And I remember chatting to him and, you know, obviously thinking, I think I know a bit about him from reading about him. I had a chance to meet him, and he's telling stories about, oh yes, I'm off to cover an England tour this winter. Yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I work on cricket full time. I get to travel the world, to being a producer covering cricket. And I thought, God, imagine that, you know, traveling the world, covering England at cricket. Oh, you know, amazing. And you wouldn't believe that 10 years or, roughly 10 years later, I was doing the job. And that, you know, unbelievable fortune, really, that sort of fell into place. But yeah, certainly that experience of meeting Peter was pretty special and gave me a bit of an inspiration going forward.
And then you're also involved in radio sport prior to getting the actual involved in TMS. So you're involved in golf production, etc. Do you think working on other sports is also important?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, the cricket was always my passion, but what was really good was I got a job. Basically, I was working in local radio. Then in 2000, sorry, not 1999, I had the opportunity to. I kept applying for jobs to work in London because I was quite keen to have a go at work in the sports room. You know, the BBC Radio Sports Room is one of the most famous sports organisations in the world in terms of radio, and something I obviously listened to, and had the chance to apply for a job. And I worked in the sports room just on general programmes, really. I worked on sports bulletins. I worked on some producing. So I eventually got involved in Sports Week. I produced that for a while, which is like a magazine programme. And then I got the chance to work on golf, initially as a assistant producer and then as a sort of main producer. And for me, that was a great experience, actually, of producing large outside broadcasts. So I got to produce American majors, the Masters and the Open, US Open, Open Championship in the UK, and then the Ryder Cup as well. And that, for me, whatever sport it is, it gave you a real opportunity to work in a big outside broadcast. Actually, golf is far more complicated to produce than cricket is because of the geography of it all. You know, you've got players out on a large course. You've got to try and keep on top of all the action happening exactly the same time so you don't miss anything. In fact, cricket in some ways is much more straightforward because the action's out there in front of you. But yeah, absolutely. I'd say to anybody, you know, don't think I want to do cricket, that's all I'm going to do. Having as wide an experience as you possibly can is great. And I'm not just talking about sports, but also genres, whether it's working in broadcasting, writing, TV, producing, whatever it might be. You know, be as wide open as you can, be as all-rounder as you can. You can obviously specialise, and it's good to specialise at some point, but it's amazing that when you put yourself in forward of an employer, if you could say, well, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that, it really helps. And for me, what happened was, in 2002, I just produced the Ryder Cup, and they wanted someone to come in to work alongside Peter Baxter when 2020 cricket started that summer, because it was obviously a brand new competition. They were going to broadcast on 5 Live. They wanted to do it a bit differently, and they felt that Peter couldn't do that as well as Test Match Special and all of his other responsibilities. So they wanted someone to take over that, and it just so happened I produced quite a successful outside broadcast for the Open Championship, and they said, well, what's your main sport? And I said, well, actually, it's cricket. And again, I obviously applied for the job, and because I'd had the experience of producing a big OB, it put me in a really good position to get that job. So yeah, back in 2002 was my first sort of involvement in radio cricket.
And then Peter Baxter retired in 2007. How was that feeling to kind of become then the lead producer?
Yeah, look, it was intimidating. It was exciting. I mean, Peter had done the job for 34 years. So, I mean, it's extraordinary to take over a job that someone's occupied for so long. I had 2 advantages, really. One was I had an opportunity to work alongside him for 5 years. So what I did is I worked effectively as a 5 Live cricket producer in charge of T20, but also able to work on some of the OBs with cricket. So I was looking after Pat Murphy, doing the updates on 5 Live. And I got to do some producing abroad. So obviously Peter needed some breaks. So I had the opportunity in 2002-03 to go to an Ashes tour. So my first full day in cricket was actually at the MCG for the Boxing Day Test. And that was a real pinch yourself moment. You know, walking out and thinking, this is my job now, you know, at this famous ground, at this, you know, iconic sporting occasion, the Boxing Day Test. But actually, it gave me the chance that when I took over in 2007, I felt I knew everyone, had the contacts, I knew how it worked. I'd have 5 years to work under Peter, and that was brilliant. And the other advantage was that I was taking over a position of an incredible strength. You know, it wasn't like a football manager taking over a dodgy team that was struggling and the manager being sacked. I was taking over a team absolutely at the height of its powers, celebrating its 50th anniversary with iconic broadcasters, loved by its listeners. And that gave me a huge advantage. Yeah, it was intimidating because what you realise very quickly is that everything you do to do a Test Match Special has immense scrutiny because people really care. But isn't it wonderful to do a job where people care about what you do? And that for me was really special.
And you mentioned working abroad. You said Australia. The job looks glamorous in terms of travel, but it must also be difficult spending time away from home, even in the UK, going up and down the country. Difficult?
Yeah, of course it is. Look, you never complain about the opportunity to follow England around the world. I'm incredibly privileged to have the opportunity. But yes, of course, you know, I've got a young family, and I'm aware that every time I go away for periods of time, you're missing birthdays, school events, anniversary, all that sort of thing. And you know, it's very difficult for my wife and family to cope with me being away a lot, and that's the difficult time. And you do feel guilty a lot of the time. You know, you'll face these days. I mean, it's different to when Peter was doing the job when he was abroad. a few years ago, he was allowed sort of one phone call a week. I mean, I can FaceTime kids and Skype and that sort of thing. There are ways of communicating. Well, yeah, of course you're away an awful long time, and working abroad has its challenges. You know, sometimes it's, you know, it works really well and you get amazing chances and experiences to see the world, but sometimes working in some environments is deeply frustrating, technically challenging and stressful, and just getting a program on the air, frankly, an achievement, less than what's being broadcast on it.
Yeah, so how is the team in terms of how does it split in terms of being at home and away? You must have more personnel. Am I right in saying more personnel working on the production side of things when in the UK, but abroad, do you have to, you know, muck in and stuff that you're perhaps less experienced in? How does it
Yeah,
work?
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, so in basically the cricket team at the moment, in radio terms, there's only sort of two full-time producers, myself and Henry Moran, who work in cricket, and we've got to cover, you know, all cricket. I'm not just talking about international cricket. We also take responsibility for county cricket, women's cricket, all that different area as well, which we do so much commentary on these days. So there's a lot for us to keep an eye on. But yeah, I'd say the difference between abroad and home particularly is that we also have some engineering support in the UK. So generally for games at grounds, we have people from the BBC outside broadcast team who help to put together the sound of a programme and technically how it works. But because of the costs of working abroad, when we do a test match out overseas, generally we're on our own. So I will go to Australia or India or Sri Lanka, wherever, mainly on my own. And my job is to both produce, but also to engineer the programme. So that literally involves, you know, carrying the equipment. I have a big red case that I take with me, you know, taking it up the stairs myself, up to the commentary position, taking all the plugs out, working out the power, seeing if the lines work, negotiating with the local authorities to what space you're in. So you literally, from the start to finish of a tour game, you are responsible. So literally from dragging the case up to the stairs, you know, plugging everything in, working out what goes well, negotiating with whoever's providing broadcast lines that you've obviously booked yourself in advance, you know, putting the equipment out, make sure it all works, through to you're then responsible on the tour to getting the commentators to the commentary box. So, you know, getting them, looking at the travel, that sort of situation, you know, working out how they're going to be fed, what times they're on, doing the rota, to physically, you know, what's on the programme, getting guests and ideas. And then often on a tour as well, I do some of the broadcasting because, again, we have a much smaller team. So whereas in England, we have like an Ellen Aldroyd who might do updates, or Nikesh Rugani, or those sort of people. Often when you're abroad, because there's a smaller team, I'll have to do some of the updates as well, which I don't mind doing. But inevitably, it means you're juggling all these different things. So look, it is, and I've got the experience. I've done this for, you know, almost 20 years of working abroad. So clearly, you know, I know what I'm doing. But every day there's a new challenge. And every day, you know, it's not straightforward working abroad, and in some ways it's more satisfying if you can get a program on the air in difficult circumstances. It's almost more satisfying than doing a test match in the UK.
So times that been disastrously gone wrong? Any times?
Well, obviously not disastrously wrong, but no. Yeah, look, there's been amazing challenges. I mean, I'll give you two examples. One was actually my first full game in charge of TMS. Was actually in Sri Lanka, in Dambulla, as a one-day international there. And I, again, never worked in Sri Lanka. It was one of my favourite places to tour now. But we were broadcasting, we arrived, and Dambulla is basically in the jungle in Sri Lanka. It really is in the heart of the country. And we arrived the day before a one-day international, and I've been told there was some sort of broadcast line for us to broadcast from. Got in the commentary box, totally bare, nothing there at all. And I'm thinking, how are we going to get this out to England from here? Fortunately, what I had with me was a very small sort of satellite dish. And I thought, well, if I can somehow manage to maneuver that to a position where I can get a signal, we might be able to broadcast. Anyway, comes to the day of the game, and it's a day-night game. It's in the middle of the jungle. There's obviously enormous floodlights. It's really hot. I've got my shorts on. It's really hot. And I realised the only way I can get a signal for the satellite to pick up to be able to broadcast is I have to physically hold the satellite at an angle. I can't put it down anywhere. I've got to hold it. So I've got my hands out holding this satellite, got the whole of this one-day international. Now, of course, because it's a day-nighter and it's in Dambulla and the floodlights are on, there are literally millions of bugs. I mean, the whole jungle worth of bugs have come down. So my legs have been bitten to smithereens. And I'm holding this satellite dish up to be able to broadcast. And in my mind, when I had a vision of what being a test match special a producer would be like abroad. It wasn't necessarily that. It was sort of sitting back, and drinking a pina colada, enjoying the cricket in the background, relaxing. And there I was being bitten to smithereens, holding this satellite. Fortunately, England were monumentally bad that day. It was actually Andrew Strauss's England debut. It was all over in a matter of hours. So we managed to get through it. But that was a real challenge. And then I had another one in in Dubai rather, in the United Arab Emirates, when again, all our broadcast lines went down and we ended up having to broadcast the whole of Test Match Special on an iPad, which again wasn't necessarily what we planned. But yeah, I guess, one of your great thoughts are, if you've got a challenge, a technical challenge abroad, if you can get through it, you've achieved anything. There's only one time I think we totally failed. We're in Karachi, one of the last chances, I guess, England were in Pakistan, doing a one-day international. And I'd done everything to make sure we had everything covered. We had these high-quality broadcast lines called ISDN lines. They were there. We had a satellite backup. We had a phone line, and we had mobile phones. I'm thinking, I've got all these different methods to broadcast. We start the program in Karachi. The broadcasting's going fine. First of all, the ISDN line fails. Well, never mind. We'll go onto the satellite. Looked on the satellite, signal wouldn't work. Thought, okay, I'll phone the studio, so we've got a problem. Went to the landline, looked it up, no dialing tone. Thought, okay, so I'll go to the mobile, pick the mobile up, no network coverage. And I looked and thought, there's nothing I can do.
So you've also worked with, some great broadcasters, talking like Jonathan Agnew, Henry Blofeld, etc., Geoffrey Boycott. Word about the characters and any stories that kind of stand out in your mind?
Yeah, look, I'm, again, incredibly privileged to work with people who are heroes, cricketing heroes, some of them broadcast heroes. And again, I talked about being intimidated a bit, is because you're working with people who are not just great cricket broadcasters, they're great broadcasters. I think people like Jonathan Agnew is one of, the UK's finest broadcasters, full stop. So yeah, I mean, amazing. And what I'd say about someone like Henry Blofeld or the Geoffrey Boycott is that they are exactly as you hear them on the radio. There is absolutely nothing different. You meet Henry Blofeld for the first time, it is my dear old thing, within seconds. And he is one of the great characters. And you've been touched by a chance to work with these people. Geoffrey Boycott's one example, I gave that Karachi story. And this reflects well on Geoffrey, actually, because sometimes, you get the image of him as being a bit of a tyrant, because he certainly speaks his mind. And there's been occasions like that. But, he has got a softer side. And in fact, that day in Karachi, when all the lines failed and everything else, it was my first tour working with Geoffrey Boycott. And I thought, he's going to think, who's this muppet? Who's this guy who's, come to do TMS and doesn't know what he's doing? And I remember the day really panicking, couldn't get it working. And he turned to me and said, listen, you're doing everything you can. Don't worry. And actually, that really relaxed me, because I thought, well, if Geoffrey Boycott's not annoyed with how my incompetence, then, frankly, I must be doing all right. We managed to get back on the air. So yeah, he's someone who's obviously, a real huge character, but definitely, somebody who's got a different side to them. But yeah, generally, larger than life, brilliant characters, huge personalities. I'll give you one sort of thing about Phil Tuffnell, who again is one of the great characters in TMS. And again, you'd imagine from him this sort of, larrikin kind of character. He'd always be turning up late and lazy, that sort of thing. But that's the opposite of Tuffers. He's incredibly hardworking. He hates being late. In fact, never is. If he's even thinks he's got a moment of any trouble being late, he'll phone you up in advance. He'll warn you. He's very punctual, very dedicated, and again, perhaps different to the persona you'd imagine.
And then when it comes to actually a game, you're the one that actually puts a roster of the broadcasters together. Is there a time where you've looked at a list of broadcasters and I thought, it's difficult to leave one out? Has there been an uncomfortable moment for you?
Oh, every time you do a rota, to be honest, is difficult, because we have an amazingly talented group of broadcasters and summarisers on TMS, and I can't use them all the time. So yeah, every single time I feel frustrated and guilty that you can't have everyone in, and also you become quickly aware it's a bit subjective, isn't it? A lot of people I'll often publicise on Twitter or Facebook or whatever a commentary team, and you realise that within seconds you will have a whole list of people saying, how have you left out this person? They're my favourite. I can't believe you used them. They're terrible. You know that it's a bit like a family, EMS, and if you leave out a member of the team, it's like losing a member of your family. So if someone moves on from the team, particularly when someone passes on like a Tony Kosia or a CMJ, you know, it's not just a bereavement in their families and the cricket family, it's people's family listening at home. You know, it's really difficult. So every time I leave out someone from the commentary team, you realise the effect it has on people's week. You know, they really love to hear certain people. So yeah, it's incredibly difficult to keep everyone in. And I'm, you know, it's the thing that literally keeps me awake at night. And certainly on the morning, I mean, what a good example, the World Cup final morning, you know, an incredible day, but I just felt terribly guilty because we'd had this amazing team we brought together commentary throughout the course of that World Cup, and I could only have certain people in the commentary team. So people like Charles Dagnall, Alison Mitchell, Daniel Norcross had all been part of the team throughout. I couldn't fit him in on the commentary team, and I felt terrible. I wrote to them in the morning of the game and said, look, you know, this is your day as much as the people there. You know, we are representing you because this is a full team tournament we've done, and you've all made a massive contribution to this. And I feel terrible you can't be there on the day, but you know, you're with us on the day, and that's how you feel. You know, you'd love to have them all the time.
And then what's the best game that you've been involved in?
Well, that's a difficult one. But I think I'm fortunate that a lot of the most amazing action has happened in the last 12 months. I mean, there are a few times I suppose I slightly judge it by how much I've cried at the game, because I don't often cry an awful lot of things, but sometimes the emotion of a cricket occasion, and some of it's a bit weird. Like I remember crying at Henry Blofeld's last commentary. It wasn't particularly, I wasn't thinking, oh my gosh, you're not going to see you again, but it was just such an amazing moment with his standing ovation at Lord's. But as an actual cricketing event, I'd say the Women's World Cup final 2017 was really special. It was an amazing game of cricket in itself, but also because you got a feeling very quickly that the day really mattered. You know, it was a very different audience there, both at the ground and listening, and he felt the importance of that day. And then I suppose you've got Headingley last year, the Ben Stokes day, and you've got the World Cup final, and it's difficult to almost separate those two. I suppose if I had to say my favourite, I'd just about go Headingley, because the men's World Cup final at Lord's was an amazing climax, super over and that sort of thing. But I didn't really enjoy the day because it was just so unbelievably tense all day long. Because again, you felt there was just so much riding on it. So there was so much planning and organisation. We knew from a sort of our point of view, you know, what it would mean for England to win the World Cup, let alone what it meant for English cricket. So I think, you know, obviously looking back on, in hindsight, incredible memories of that day, but did I enjoy it? Probably not. Whereas Headingley, it was so unexpected, really. You know, we turned up at the day, it was a sort of, look, we've had an amazing summer. You know, we had the World Cup final, nothing can live up to that. So let's just get through this game, you know, whatever. We'll do the best job we can. And then as the day grew, the narrative grew, you suddenly sensed something amazing is going to happen. And there was a moment when, so we had Jim Maxwell commentating because it felt like Australia were going to win. And there was just a moment, Ben Stokes was getting towards 100. And I thought, you know, I've got a feeling about this. I've just got a feeling the momentum is shifting. And I said to Aggers, look, you go on. And he said, what do you mean? He said, no, you go on. I really think it's going to happen. So we made sure that we had an Australian representative with Glenn McGrath, and Alistair Cook was on with him. And we had that incredible finish. And certainly, again, there were some tears and some rather embarrassing faces from me at the back of the commentary box that got caught on camera looking like a sort of a goldfish. And that's what we felt like. It was just a day of total unexpected, but also just unmitigated joy from an England fan that it's difficult to replicate or remember anything as special as that.
And then one final question just to end on. In your opinion, is there opportunities for youngsters wanting to get into cricket from a journalist perspective? And what's the one piece of advice that you'd give?
Totally. Yeah, look, I'm always looking for new talent. That's the one thing I'm probably more proud of on TMS than anything else, is bringing through new broadcasters. You know, that's why I enjoy the most. You know, I was very fortunate to work with people like Isha Guha, Alison Mitchell, Ebony Rainford, Brent. I managed to help bring through them in their careers. Now you turn on the TV or radio anywhere in the world, and they're key broadcasters, and that's wonderful to see those sort of people coming through. And some people contact. Alison's a good example. She contacted me, said she was interested in getting involved. We've managed to create opportunities, and she's taken it fantastically well. So absolutely, I'd say to people, you know, what I think showing initiative is always good, and it's getting that balance between persistence and annoyance. So what you do is you show some initiative, whether it's, you know, recording some commentary off the telly, sending it to me, and then following it up with an email, not bombarding people with it. And the same with all sorts of people. You know, we're obviously busy, but we're always looking for new talent. We don't want to be rude to people. We want to give people opportunities, but you can't always, sometimes it takes some time to get back to people. But yeah, I'd say, show initiative. So whether it's, putting together a YouTube channel, or you're putting together a mock recording or a website piece, whatever, show you've done something, you can do it on your own. Gain as many skills as you can. I say being an all-rounder, look at a cricket team, the all-rounder's the one everyone wants. You want your Ben Stokes, you want your Andrew Flintoff. These are the characters that do well, and that's very much the same in broadcasting. You arm yourself with as many skills as you can, and that will make you easy to employ, and then be flexible. So if you have an opportunity, absolutely grab it with both hands, and it's amazing how that will open up, because suddenly when you're looking for people for future opportunities, that person, that you can trust them and like them. So, that's my main advice. Yes, I'd say there is absolutely the chance. I remember, at a schools careers event saying, I want to get involved in broadcast, that sort of thing. And someone saying, look, lovely, but it doesn't happen. Those opportunities don't really exist for many people. And I would say the opposite to people. If you really, really want to do it, if you really believe you really want to do it and can do it, go for it. Because, I often think I've got the best job in the world. I get to listen to my favorite radio program. I get to watch the cricket in front of me with a constant supply of cake. And that for me is a dream job. And it's certainly possible for people to follow their dreams and to get the opportunities that they can, put in the hard work, put in the perseverance, arm yourself with skills. But if you do that, you've definitely got a chance.
Perfect, Adam. Really appreciate your time. Fantastic insight into your career, and some great advice you've just given as well. So thank you very much.
Really good to speak to you, and all the best with all the other programs you're doing.
Perfect. So Neel Khagram, Cricket Last Words, Adam Mountford. Thank you.